The G20 joint declaration in Delhi is being hailed as a major diplomatic victory for India, which managed to bridge the gap between the West and Russia over the ongoing war in Ukraine. The declaration, adopted by consensus on Saturday, calls for a peaceful resolution of the conflict, respect for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, and adherence to international law and UN resolutions. Ensure you stay well informed by subscribing to our channel, Slant News. We provide the latest, most credible news. Thank you for considering us. The declaration was the result of months of intense negotiations, led by India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, and Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. India, which holds the G20 presidency this year, had to balance the interests and concerns of its diverse partners, especially the US and Russia, which have been at loggerheads over Ukraine since Russia invaded the country in March 2022. The main sticking point was how to address the Ukraine crisis in the declaration, without alienating or provoking either side. The West wanted a strong condemnation of Russia's aggression and a clear support for Ukraine's sovereignty, while Russia wanted to avoid any blame or pressure and to highlight its own grievances and proposals. India played the role of a mediator and a bridge builder, using its historical ties and strategic partnerships with both sides to find a common ground. According to sources, India proposed a draft declaration that recalled the previous G20 statement on Ukraine issued in Bali in November 2022, which had expressed concern over the situation and called for dialogue and de-escalation. India also suggested to include references to relevant UN resolutions and principles, such as the UN Charter, the Helsinki Final Act, and the Budapest Memorandum, which affirm the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and inviolability of borders of all states. India also proposed to mention the need for a just and lasting peace that respects these principles, and the aspirations of the Ukrainian people. The draft declaration was initially met with resistance from both sides. The US and its allies wanted more specific and forceful language that would hold Russia accountable for its actions, and demand its withdrawal from Ukraine. They also wanted to express solidarity with Ukraine and pledge more support for its defense and development. Russia, on the other hand, rejected any criticism or ultimatum from the G20 and insisted on including its own narrative and demands. Russia wanted to emphasize its security concerns over NATO's expansion and activities near its borders, its proposal for a new European security architecture that would limit NATO's role and presence in Eastern Europe, and its offer of a referendum in Crimea to decide its status. India persisted with its efforts to persuade both sides to compromise and accept its draft declaration as a basis for further discussion. India argued that the declaration was not meant to assign blame or impose solutions, but to reaffirm the G20's commitment to peace and stability in Ukraine and the region. India also pointed out that the declaration was not legally binding or enforceable, but rather a political statement that reflected the collective will and vision of the G20 leaders. India also assured both sides that their views and interests would be taken into account in other forums and platforms, such as the UN Security Council, where India currently holds a non-permanent seat. After several rounds of consultations and revisions, India was able to secure the agreement of all parties on the final text of the declaration on Saturday morning, just hours before the summit concluded. The declaration was welcomed by UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, who praised India's leadership and diplomacy. He said that the declaration was an example of effective multilateralism at a time of great divisions in the world. The declaration has been widely seen as a significant achievement for India, which has demonstrated its ability and willingness to play a constructive role in global affairs. The declaration has also boosted India's image as a leader of the global South and developing countries, as India also successfully pushed for the inclusion of the African Union as a permanent member of the G20. The declaration has also enhanced India's relations with both the US and Russia, as India has shown respect and sensitivity for their positions and concerns. However, the declaration does not mean that the war in Ukraine is over or that the tensions between the West and Russia have been resolved. The declaration is only a statement of intent, not a plan of action. The implementation of the declaration will depend on the willingness and actions of all parties involved, especially Russia and Ukraine. The declaration also does not address some of the underlying issues that have fueled the conflict, such as NATO's role in Europe, Crimea's status, or Ukraine's integration with the EU. These issues will require further dialogue and negotiation among all stakeholders. Therefore, while the declaration is a positive step forward, it is not a guarantee of peace or stability. It is only an opportunity for dialogue and cooperation that should not be wasted or undermined by any party.